Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Members Monday. Now, can you let me know in the chat, can you hear me and can you see me? And I think a few people were in the previous stream. So thank you so much for tuning into the previous stream. And some people made some positive comments about Members Monday. So thank you for that. And thank you to Bart, because I used your testimonial, Bart. I hope you didn't mind. Perhaps I should have asked you. I used your testimonial in the stream, one of your Facebook comments. So thank you so much for that. So who have we got here today? Nigel is here today. Welcome, Nigel. So Nigel, is this your first live? I think it's your second live. So welcome. Jasfin is here too. Jasfin, welcome. Thank you for your email reply to my email. I have looked through that. That was good value for me. Thank you. Bob is with us. Welcome, Bob. Bob, we're still working on your file. I don't think you were with us last week, Bob. So we've made a bit more progress with your file. Welcome, Bob. Fantastic to see you. Bart is with us, of course. Welcome, Bart. And I think that's everybody so far. If I've missed you, I can see we've got 6 or 7 people watching. So if I've missed you, then make sure you say hello. Okay, so thank you, Bart. Bart says no problem. Jasmine says thank you. It really is my pleasure, guys. Thank you for being part of our little community. Little but growing, small but growing, I might add. We've had a few new members this week. So yeah, I think we've just got to keep growing it as best we can. So let me know in the chat. Were you in last week's stream, or have you been able to catch up with last week's stream? Last week's stream, we looked at some cool data validation techniques, and yeah, some really cool stuff. We had some cell validation techniques, we had some input messages on cell validation, we had some conditional formatting. How cool is this? If I've got a spreadsheet like this, I'll be really excited. I'm sure you would too. So conditional formatting, so the colors change according to if there's an entry in there. Then we've got our formula here as well. Then we also did some VBA. We did some VBA to test, to go through all of the cells and to test if they have entries in or not. So all of these cool data validation mechanisms, I've used all of those at one point or another, but never all of them. Maybe 2 or 3 of them combined together. I'm not saying you should use all of them, but find the right combination for your project. Gerhard is here as well. Good evening, Gerhard, and welcome to you. So the question is, what do you want to do today? As always, I've got my ideas, and I'm kind of working through this project as I would work through the project in the real world. Now, David, I'm not sure if David is with us in the chat. I'm not sure if he is, but David sent me one of his files. And I don't want to be overcritical of anybody or of you, David, but a common problem, and David's file did show this characteristic. A common problem is files get too complex too quickly. They get too complex too quickly. You must have been there. You've worked with a file. You can't understand the formula. You can't understand the code. By being steady and systematic, we can keep the stress levels down and understand things better. We can make things easier for ourselves. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going through this file step by step, building the input mechanism first. Then we're going to look at building the database. Where's the data going to go? Then we're going to look at building the reports. So step by step, planning and then implementing the plan. This is the way for us to do Excel development. Okay, Bart said he's had some new ideas for his project. Good. Yeah, Bart, well, maybe we could go back to your file next week. Let me know what your ideas are. Did David have a summary tab? Not sure what you mean by that, Justin. Justin, this is Bob's file. It's not David's file. And okay, good. So what I'd like to do is today, how do we get this information into a database? So a database, we want to take these entries and list them on a particular sheet. This is what we're going to have to do. I've got a particular way of doing this that I think is pretty cool, that I have covered on the channel, but it's not a very popular video, and we're going to look at some improvements on that approach anyway. In the file, we do have a data sheet. We do have a data sheet here, but I'm going to go ahead and build another data sheet. I'm going to go ahead and build another data sheet, and then we'll look at how to get data from here into that database. For a new user, does he point the user to a starting point or cell? So Jasmine, are you talking about this sheet? Does he summarize what the spreadsheet is supposed to accomplish? Yeah, I think you're talking about David's stuff here. Yeah, Jasmine, I was talking about David sent me an email. So we've had an email dialogue about a spreadsheet file. I've been trying to help him with that file. Maybe it's something we can look at in future weeks. Yeah. So David's file, we haven't looked at that yet in Members Monday, but David had said we might look at it in future in Members Monday. So it's certainly a possibility in the future. So I'm going to go ahead, make sure you're working along with me. Let's go to the desktop view. I'm going to add a new sheet to this file. So click the plus button here. I'm also going to change the order of the sheet so that the sheets we're using appear at the beginning of the file, the enter receipts sheet and sheet 1 here. Alt-OHR on the Windows PC to change the name of the sheet. We're going to call this sheet data. We can't call this sheet data because there's another sheet data. Let's call it Chris data. Okay, a good way to guarantee that your name isn't taken is to use your actual name. That's why I use Chris Cell and things like that. So what's an easy way to get all of these entries into a kind of column format? Well, we can copy them. Let's go Control C. So I just holding down the Shift key there. I'll do that again. Holding down the Shift key and then using the arrow key. Now I'm hitting the arrow key multiple times. Control C to copy. And then Control page down to go to the next sheet. And now we're going to go Control Alt V, paste special, Control Alt V. And then what do we want to do? We want to transpose the data, change it from vertical orientation to horizontal orientation. So we're going to go transpose here. And then we'll just take the values because we don't want the formats. And then let's see how that's looking. Okay. I'll go to the zoomed in view here. Okay, not too bad. Right, Alt-HOH, let's change the row height here. And then holding down the Shift key and the arrows. And let's go Alt-HW. Alt-HW is going to wrap the text. And now Alt-HDC. Alt-HDC, delete the column. F4, delete the column. F4, delete the column. F4 to repeat the last action, of course. And then here, F4 again, repeat the last action. So did you see how quickly we could do that using keyboard shortcuts? There's one thing I want to check here. I want to keep the layout of each sheet, broadly speaking, similar across the file. Why is that? Well, there's a number of reasons for that. Generally, it's good to have consistent presentation through a file, but I'm talking about specific things here. I'm talking about having 3 columns here that are consistent across all the sheets. That's going to allow us to build a custom navigation system later. We've already spoken about planning in Members Monday. We have to plan ahead. If we want a custom navigation system, you don't have to have it in an Excel implementation, but it is a nice feature. We have to plan ahead, make sure we have, broadly speaking, the same layouts across all sheets. Let me know in the chat if you're working along with me. So I'm going to make sure on the data sheet that we've got 3 columns here. So Control Spacebar, Windows PC, Control Spacebar, Control Shift and plus. That's going to give us 2 new columns here. Then I'm going to go ahead, change the column widths. If I wanted this column to be the same width as this column, how would I do that quickly? Alt-HOW and then enter, then back to the other sheet, and then F4 is going to repeat last action, F4 and F4 again. Have we got the same zoom level across the sheets? Yes, we do have the same zoom level. So these are the things that have to be in place later for us to do that cool custom navigation system. The zoom levels have to be the same and the layout has to be the same, broadly speaking. Okay, I'm actually going to put another column in here. Just look at this layout. I'm going to put one more column in here. Okay, and what about rows? So here we've got 4 rows at the top. Going to replicate that, make sure I've got 4 rows at the top here. Okay. Good. Gerhard says, following you. Excellent. Good to hear you're following along. So important to actually follow along, to actually develop the skill. Even the muscle memory in your fingers, those keyboard shortcuts, that's muscle memory. That's like, you know, a baseball pitcher remembers how to throw the ball. You know, we're kind of Excel athletes here, you know. My fingers are from years of doing those shortcuts. It's in the muscle memory. I don't even have to think about how to do it. Bart says, I can't work along today, but I'm watching from my cell phone. I'm not at home, but I can follow it perfectly. Fantastic, Bart. Good to hear you can follow on your cell phone as well. So yeah, if you're not typing in then, Bart, give us lots of questions and you can certainly contribute that way. So how are we going to get the data into here? So we've got entries here. And we want to get the data across here. Well, we're going to do it with the support of another sheet. I have a video series on the channel called How to Move Data Around an Excel File, How I Actually Do It. That's how to move data around an Excel file, how I actually do it. We're going to do a similar approach. So if you want a very structured explanation, you can go to that video, not now, but after the live stream. And you can see, you know, broadly speaking, it's the same approach. Okay, so I'm going to get the engine sheet because we're going to use the engine sheet and bring it across here. So the sheets I'm using. So I just went and grabbed the engine sheet. The engine sheet was down here. Let's go and let's kind of just undo that. The engine sheet was down here, so I've just grabbed it and brought it across here. So I've got the 3 sheets I'm working with. They're, you know, left-hand most in the file. They're left-hand most in the file for you looking. That means they're easy to work with. Right, so, okay. Just wondering if we can use the structure we've got already. We can almost use this structure. I think we can use this structure, you know. Okay, that's an unexpected bonus. Okay, Alt-HOW here. What's the column width? Let's zoom in again. Alt-HOW. There we go. Okay, Alt-HOW. Let's have 15 column width here. Alt-HOW 15. Okay, got list of inputs here. Right. Let's have a description of the input here. Okay, Alt-HOW, enter F4, F4. Okay, so this, I just want a description of the input here, just so I know what the input is. So again, Control C, back to the engine sheets, and then Control Alt V and V, just take the values. There we go. Bart said he was thinking the same. Yeah, thank you, Bart. Okay, then I'm going to, of course, we can't delete the rows now, because if we delete the rows, we're going to lose one of these values. Alt-HDR, we can see we lost a value there, so Control Z to undo that. Control X, Control V. Control X, Control V. Control X, Control V. Oh, okay, what's happened there? What's happened here? It's not quite right down at the bottom here. Okay, let's see. So F, okay. So let's just say inputs. Let's just say input 1 and input 2 here. Okay, so we've got to do the same on the data sheet as well now. So I've just put these 2 inputs in. So Control C, going across to the data sheet. We've got to make sure this data structure is the same, of course. So I'm going to type cashier in here. And go Control Alt V. No, didn't copy that. Control C. Control Alt V and N for transpose, V for values. Sorry, E for transpose, V for values. There we go. Okay. Just to check this, how many entries do we have on the data sheet? I'm looking at the bottom of Excel now. We have 17 entries. How many entries do we have on the engine sheet? Do we have 17 entries here? Looking at the bottom of Excel, yes, we do have 17 entries. So this seems to be working. Control X, Control V. So this is input 1. And this is input 2. Yes, Bart's saying use the input list and say if then and copy to. Yes, that's essentially the idea. We're going to build a list here, and this list is going to control the process of transferring that data across. It's not actually a copy paste. It's not actually a copy paste. It's more efficient than that. Copy pasting in VBA isn't as efficient as saying X equals Y or A equals B, as we're going to see. So it's not actually a copy paste. The beauty of this approach is that we can control the process by making spreadsheet inputs. So by making inputs in this spreadsheet, we can control the process, whatever we need to do. We don't have to go into the VBA editor to control the process. That's why I love this approach for moving data around the file. That's why I use it all in my projects. This is Members Monday, guys. This morning I was working on a VBA project for a customer. I sent it to a customer this morning, got an email back saying they're very happy with it. That was great. Some of the approaches I did then I'm going to be using now. So as I've said before, I don't think it exists anywhere in the world. You let me know. Okay, Bart, yeah, this looks good. Yes, that's right, Bart. So Bart is looking good in the chat. He's giving us some clues here. So we've got the cell on the input sheet. We've got the description. Description's not absolutely necessary, but the description makes it easier for us as a programmer. You know, what if you were coming back to this file in 2 weeks, in 2 months, in 2 years? I work on files that I built 4 or 5 years ago, and it can be difficult going back to them. I'll tell you one thing, it makes you realize how much better you get. Yeah, and I'm able to go back and improve some of the program that I did 4 or 5 years ago. So, but what I'm saying is make things clear for the customer, for other programmers, but for yourself, mainly make things clear. And this description column just helps make things clear for us. So we've got list of inputs, description. Then we're going to go database column here. And here we're going to have the column number in the database of this entry. Do you know? Let me know in the chat, or maybe you can do it yourself. Let me know in the chat. How can I quickly get the column number of a column? Do you know? How can I quickly get the column number of a column? Jasmine says some companies think they are trying to incorporate this type of collaboration. Yes, Jasmine. I mean, with the technology we have these days, why shouldn't you have this type of collaboration? You know, why shouldn't you have, say, doctors? I mean, doctors are extremely busy people, but why can't a doctor be paid some extra money to, you know, when you come home after a shift, you know, to mentor some trainee doctors, for example? We have the technology to do that now. So yeah, I think we're could be on something really special if we can build this community and move it forward. It's hard. The leader has to know how to involve the group. Absolutely. And I try to involve the group, you know, as much as I can. You know, I hope you feel involved. If you don't feel involved on Members Monday, you know, shoot me an email. Let me know. I'll see if I can cover one of your topics. I'll see if I can do something differently in the streams to help you. Okay. How do we find the column number? Anybody in the chat got it? So you probably know, or a lot of people seem to know the row formula. So using row, we can get the row number 7, and we can take that down. You can see Excel knows the row number. That's cool. That's helpful. Works for the column as well. So we can say equals column here. Okay, and we just get the column. Yeah, Bart has got it. Well done, Bart. We've got the column there. So we can go ahead, just drag this across. And that's going to give us the column numbers. This is going to really help later when we're doing that data input. This is going to be super helpful for us. Not the data input, when we're transferring the data into the database. So kind of data input. Okay, so let's take these values. We're doing a lot of transposing today. We could call this the transposition stream maybe. Control C, back into the engine, Control Alt V, and then V for values and E for transpose. So hopefully you're getting to grips with these keyboard shortcuts, particularly with this paste special dialog box. Like knowing the shortcuts going to save you so much time. Hit OK. Then we've got our values in there. You can see because we took values with the V button in the paste special dialog box, the V shortcut, you can see we've got values. We haven't got that formula here. And we can go ahead and hit the escape button to exit cut copy mode, and then the delete button just to delete those values there because we don't need that. Okay, so we get in there. We get in there. As always, it takes a bit of time with VBA, but slow and steady wins the race. That's what I always say. Just keep it slow, steady, systematic. Keep the stress levels down. That's the way to do programming sessions. Now, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Bart has already said we could do this using offset. We could do this using offset. I'm going to suggest we use a different technique to do this. And I'm trying to think why. But to me, this technique seems the most natural here. So it's not offset. Bart or anybody else, can you think of another technique for doing this? Bob's with us. Bob said, I had to switch to my cell phone. We lost power. Oh, a plow truck hit the utility pole. Oh no. So Bob, where are you in the States? Yeah, that does sound crazy. Yeah, Jasmine, that does sound crazy. Yeah, I hope nobody was hurt out there. So it looks like you got some very wintry conditions out there. So take care, and it's good to have you on the cell phone, Bob. Take care out there. So Jasmine says, can we use VLOOKUP or index match? Might be possible. Might be possible. We're not looking at a formula in this situation, though. In this situation, we're looking at using a VBA method to move things around. Bob is in upstate New York. Okay, sounds very, very snowy there at the moment. What about Bart says range, yeah. Bart, yeah, range is often the answer. What about dot cells? Is anybody using dot cells? Now, the advantage of dot cells over offset is if we use dot cells, then we don't need an anchor point. When we use offset, we say range A1 dot offset 11. So we have to have an anchor point. With cells, we don't need an anchor point. Excel assumes that we're talking about the whole spreadsheet. So we don't need to put that anchor point in. Now that for me makes dot cells slightly easier to work with. Just slightly easier. Don't get me wrong, offset is very close to my heart and I love offset, but dot cells can be useful for us. So let's see if we can use dot cells here to get this done. If you want an introduction to dot cells, then you can go to xlvba.cells for beginners, xlvba.cells for beginners for super useful videos. And I always say on the channel, we've got overrated series, we've got underrated series. That's an underrated series, xlvba.cells for beginners. Jasmine says yes. Jasmine says she's used dot cells in macros sometimes. Yes. Well, we're going to use it today. So make sure you're working along with me. So we're going to say let's say transfer data, informative name for the routine, of course. Just get this optimal mic position is important. Sub transfer data. Okay, we're definitely going to need a generic range variable. Okay. Oh, Jasmine said I learned it from your tutorials. Thank you, Jasmine. Good stuff. Bart says I've never seen the video, but I have seen the video, but never used it. Yes, it's funny. Like you don't need it. You don't need to use it. But as you move through your career, you do more and more applications. You're going to notice, oh, that tool works a bit better in that situation. That tool works a bit better in that situation. If you were a master craftsman, a carpenter, say, you would pick up more and more tools as you go through your career. You don't need them. But those subtle differences, that's going to make a difference when you get to professional level. Okay, so have we got any names here? How can we quickly check if we've got any names? Okay, we do have E input start there. Right. So Bart, we do need range now because, yeah, we want to have dynamic quality here. Yeah, we want to have dynamic quality. So I won't say to Excel, loop through, start here, then loop through the cells until you get to an empty cell. So loop through all these cells. But if we have more entries at the bottom, we want Excel to be able to handle that. We want it to have dynamic quality. Something that's dynamic works if there's a change in circumstances. Jasmine says uses dot cells for hide and unhide columns. Interesting. Yep, I could see you using it for that. That's good to hear that you've tried an application of this. Right, Chris sell it as range. So let's try this first. There we go. I think you can see everything there. Okay, it's important when you open a statement that needs to be closed that you close it straight away. And then I'm going to go ahead and say dot range. We're just going to try to select the range first. Okay, so it's quite difficult to loop through a cells in a dynamic way, to loop through a dynamic range. So let's do something easier. That's going to be an intermediary step that's going to move us in the right direction. So let's just select the cells first. So you might want to stop the video if you're watching on the replay. Let's try to select the cells first. I think E input start was the named range. Put input starts. Okay, so this is range, of course. And then I can go ahead now, because I'm lazy. Laziness can be a virtue in programming. That's what my first programming lecturer told me, my first programming teacher. Dot end Excel down. Excel down, double brackets to close, dot select. Okay, interesting. So what's going to happen now if we run this code? What's going to happen now? We can do the, one reason I love VBA, there's many reasons I love VBA, you know that. One reason I love VBA, just trying to change my setup here slightly. There we go. One reason I love VBA is for exactly this, where you can line up the VBA editor, line up the spreadsheet, and then work through the code and actually see what's happening. Super powerful. I love doing this. Bart says, I really love the dynamic solutions. So do I, Bart. Oh, and even more importantly, Bart, customers. Customers love dynamic solutions because a lot of customers out there, they're used to solutions where, okay, but I can't add to that database, can I? Or, okay, but I can't do this because it will stop working. And then they have a dynamic solution and they just absolutely love it. It's a game changer for a lot of people. Right, let's see what's happens here. What's going to happen? Can you zoom in on that formula just a bit? Do you mean this this piece of programming, Jasmine? I think you mean this line of programming here. I can't easily do that, actually. I can't easily do that. But I'll tell you what I can do. I can copy this into this spreadsheet. And then let's see what we can do here. If I copy it here, and then do what you should never do in Excel, which is change the zoom level. Oh, I've changed the zoom level. Seriously, I never change the zoom level on a spreadsheet because what does that do? It means it's inconsistent across sheets. So if you have a dynamic, some kind of nice formatting, it's not going to look good. Okay, can you see that better anyway, Jasmine, like that? I'm going to have to zoom back out now. Yeah, that's certainly a difficult one to understand if you haven't seen it before. Okay, hopefully you got to see that, Jasmine. So I'm going to zoom back out to 100% now, and hopefully you can see it in the VBA editor. There we go. Jasmine said yes, and thank you. Thank you. Okay, so what's going to happen? Let's move the VBA editor across. Let's delete this now. Okay, let's go F5, run the code. Let's see what happens. I'm just sense checking the code. We can see that is selected. This range is selected. Now let's check the dynamic quality. Control X, Control V, and then the F5 key again. We can see that range is selected. Oh, beautiful dynamic quality. Control X, Control V, Control C, Control V. Okay, what's going to happen now? F5, dynamic quality. What's going to happen now though? Let's clean these off the bottom. Control Shift down, delete, Control X, Control V. What's going to happen now? You know, this is where dynamic solutions can struggle. Let's hit the play button here and you can see Excel would only work through the first 6 rows. First 7 rows? Yeah, the first 7 rows. Let me know in the chat for additional credit. Let me know in the chat. If you know how we could get over this problem. How could we get over this problem? Even if we had an empty row, how could we make this dynamic code work? Even if we had an empty row. Does anybody know? Okay, good. David said just change the font size. Yep, should have done that. I think we got around that in the end. Okay, so we should be good. David, it's good to see you. I didn't know you were in the chat. So welcome, David. How are you? And how is it Bloemfontein where you live? How's the weather out there? Okay, good. So we don't just want to select this range. We're going to say for each Chris cell in, cell in, I'm going to go ahead and use an underscore there. You see the underscore I've put in? That means that I can continue the code on a new line and Excel will understand it as a single line of code. Yeah? And it's important you get the right syntax here. So you have to have a space here and then you can go on to the next line of code. Nigel says, yeah, so I think we're talking about how to get around the situation if one of these cells was empty. Nigel says, yes, we could count the cells. We could count the cells. That's possible, but this would still be problematic. If we counted the cells, it's likely that Excel would work through these cells, you see. To get Excel to work through these cells and then to work through these cells is more difficult. Yeah, Bart says, I think you've taught that already, but I forgot. Yeah. Don't worry. Don't worry about that. David says, yes, we've got a thunderstorm over there in South Africa. David, are you following the cricket? I do support England cricket, and I think we did beat South Africa today in the test match. So what you could do is use a technique, get Excel to go to the bottom of the spreadsheet. Yeah, so I'm at the bottom of the spreadsheet now, the end of the world, row 101,048,576. Get Excel to start at the bottom of the spreadsheet and then to go up to the first cell that has information in. Okay, we won't do that today, but that concept you can use. You can see it in other videos on the channel. You can use that concept to help you avoid problems with empty cells. Dave said, let's not go there about the cricket. Yeah, it's been a good series, David. I mean, South Africa was strong at the beginning, then we've come back, so it's been a very interesting one. Yeah, Bart said N to the top. I mean, okay, yeah, exactly. David said XL up. XL up is going to help us there. We won't cover that now. I'm not sure if we covered that in Members Monday yet. If you want to cover that, send me an email. We can cover that next week. I mean, in this situation, it's probably okay. Why is it okay? Because this is an engine sheet, and in all likelihood, the user's not going to be accessing this sheet. Okay, it's only going to be the programmer accessing this sheet, so we can trust ourselves that we're not going to accidentally delete this data. This sheet is probably going to be hidden anyway at the end of the day. So, you know, any solution, there's no such thing as a bulletproof solution. Any solution has weaknesses. If somebody really wants to break your file, they can break your file, even if you have passwords on it and things. You know, that's something companies have asked me to do several times in the past, is to implement a program to unlock a password. So it can always be unlocked. The question is, what's a sensible level of robustness? What's a sensible level of robustness, assuming that the user doesn't try to mess it up? Yes, Bart says, I think in the second Members Monday. So check out the second Members Monday. to find that referencing technique. Okay, so I'm going to test again here. And I just want to see if Excel's understanding where these cells are. F5 key. Okay, I always do this. I do this test and then I forget to delete select at the end and I get that error. I don't like getting the first error in a session. I like to try to have an errorless session with no VBA errors, a perfect session. I don't think it's a good thing, but that is what I want to do. So the first error in the session always annoys me because it means I don't have a perfect session. I've got another one now, of course. Yeah, what did I forget to do? Well, I broke one of my rules, which was when I open the loop, I didn't close it at the same time. Let's have some indentation. Come on, basic stuff, Chris, basic stuff. Yeah, the basics. If you forget the basics, things go wrong. So F5 key, F8 key, we've got C3. That makes sense. We're starting on C3. Then we've got F8 key. Then we've got C4. Okay. You can see I put a breakpoint in the code. If you click in the margin, it's going to put a breakpoint in the code. That means Excel's going to stop when it gets to that line of code. Okay, I'm happy this mechanism is working reasonably well. Okay, so we need to get VBA to look at the enter receipt sheet and to look at this cell in the enter receipts sheet. So how might we do that? Okay, this does get tricky, but we're going to say sheets enter receipts dot range, and then it's just Chris cell. It's just Chris cell. That's because if we don't put any dots afterwards, Excel is going to take the default property, which is the value. We actually want the value here. It's super confusing, but we want the value because the address is typed into the cell, including the dollar signs there. The address is typed into the cell, so this should give us the value. So this is a tricky one. So let me know in the chat what's going to happen when what's going to flash up in the message box here. What's going to flash up in the message box? Jasmine says, how about having another column counting for you if things are populated? Yes. Yes, that's possible, Jasmine. Yes. If something is on or one, then go there or count there. Possible. It's possible. It still doesn't get around the problem of defining that range though, defining the range that we want to look at. Check out Members Monday number 2. That's what I recommend you check out. Okay, so what's going to happen here? I'm going to hit the F8 key this time, stepping through the code. I think Mortimer is going to flash up. Let's have a look, Mortimer. Okay. Right, what's going on here? Let's go and test it. Okay. Let's put Bart's name in here. So I think Bart is going to flash up next. Okay, F8, and we've got Bart. Okay. Can you see what's happening here? I think Jasfin is going to flash up now. F8, Jasfin. And I think David is going to flash up now. And F8 key, and there's David. Okay, so can you see what's going on there? Excel is looping through these cells, but with a very interesting mechanism. And the mechanism is working by looking at the value in these cells, and that value is an address. Okay, so working pretty well here. Good. Let me know if you've understood that. That's quite a difficult concept to understand. As I said, we've got 2 series to look at on the channel. One series is how to use Excel VBA to move data around a file. Use Excel VBA to move data around a file, how I actually do it. And that's from about 7 or 8 months ago. And there's another series called Excel VBA.cells for beginners, which is going to help you here as well. Right. So now we've got to think, okay, where on this data sheet do we want this data to go? And here is where I think .cells is going to help us. Okay. let's go ahead and say data dot cells. And then to begin with, this is a difficult thing to do, to dynamically define the row that we want the data to go in, because remember, we want the data to build up like a database. We're going to deal with that in a second. Bart says, I understand. Thanks, Bart. We're going to deal with that in a second. We want the data to build up here like a database. That's difficult. So let's do something easier first. Let's take that intermediary step. I'm going to say row 6, and then how are we going to define the, in fact, let's do something easy first. So 6, 5 equals underscore. Okay, so what's going to happen now? So if you're watching on the replay, stop the video. Try to work it out. You're going to test it and see what happens in a second. Try to work out yourself first what's going to happen. We've got hard-coded values here. So row 6, column 5. So row 6 is row 6 and column 5 is E, because E is the 5th letter in the alphabet. So something's going to happen in this cell, and it's going to keep happening in this cell because these values are hard-coded. They're not going to be hard-coded for long. And this is a common way to develop code, is to begin with hard-coded values. That's our intermediary step. Begin with hard-code values and then later build in the dynamic quality. This is a common way of developing code. So what's going to happen? I'm going to hit the F8 key now. Okay, nothing happened there. Ah, that's because I've got the sheet reference on. Nobody in the chat told me. Guys, I thought you had my back. Nobody in... yes, Gerard's there. Sorry, Gerhardt's there. Gerhardt, thank you so much. Is the sheet name not wrong? Excellent. Absolutely spot on. So Chris data. Okay. So Control S, save the file. F8. And what's going to happen now? We can see a value has appeared there. That's the first value in our little input form here. So what's going to happen now when we continue to step through the code? David says, why not use active sheet? Great question. Great question. Now, as you move through your career, you're going to use active sheet less and less. Why is that? Because if you use active sheet, then you have to guarantee that that sheet is active. If that sheet is not active, it's not going to work. Now we're trying to do what we call, okay, we've got the concepts of static versus dynamic coding. That's one key concept that we've been talking about. So this is static coding with hard-coded values. We want to move towards dynamic coding. Another concept I want you to think about is direct versus remote coding. Direct versus remote coding. You'll start with direct and you've got to move towards remote. Move towards remote, okay? So direct coding is using active sheet, yeah? So the sheet that's currently open. We want to move towards remote coding. That means wherever we call the macro from, it could be from a user form, it could be from another file that we call the macro. Wherever we call the macro from, that macro is going to work. If you're using active sheet, then you're depending on that sheet being active. If we have a different referencing technique, for example, using the sheet name, that's an example of remote referencing, and that's going to work in more situations. It's a more dynamic and more robust approach. Does that make sense, David? Let me know. So, okay, let's go through here. What's happening? So I can see the values change, and we've got the magic of lining up the VBA editor with Excel and seeing what's happening. As I've said before, the joy never fully goes away. You know, when I first did that, managed to do this and get a program working, I was just so happy with myself. And even now, you know, it still gets me excited. Good. So we're taking that intermediary step. It seems to be working. So now we can move from static to dynamic. Let's design out the weaknesses. What are some of the weaknesses? Well, having hard-coded values in code is generally a weakness. So let's deal with this value first, which is in dot cells. This is the row. The first value is the row. The second value is the column. So how could we design out this weakness? Does anybody know? Yeah, yes, it does, unless you activate the sheet you want to work on at the beginning of the code. Yeah, David, you're absolutely right. You can activate the sheet at the beginning of the code, but that's selecting a sheet is quite an inefficient thing to do in VBA. Selecting a sheet, that's going to slow the code down. And then you're thinking about things like, well, do you want the user to actually see that sheet? Then you've got to use application.screen updating equals false. So it creates a lot of problems, and it's more efficient to use a remote referencing technique rather than using active sheets. Bart says, I used active sheets once and indeed I have problems. Yeah, I think it's likely you will have problems. Jasmine says, have a counter variable. That's possible. But has everybody forgotten about our engine sheet? What about this information here? Remember, everything happens for a reason. I do everything for a reason. I don't teach you anything you don't need to know. And so everything we do has a purpose in the coding. Jasmine says, replace the 5 with a cell in the worksheet. Not kind of, Jasmine. We are going to replace the 5 with a cell in the worksheet, with a value from a cell in the worksheet. But which cells? Which cells, and why are they important? Dave says, okay, I'm cool with that. Thank you, David. Good questions. Good discussion. I like that. Discussion is important. You know, guys, you don't have to always agree with me. I am not always right. And as you move through your coding career, you're going to realize it becomes more and more a matter of opinion and a matter of personal style as you move through your coding career. Bart says, can we make a loop? Well, we're already in a loop. Yeah, remember, we're already in a loop here. What are we looping through? This might help you. We're looping through these values, of course. Looping through these values. Can anybody get where I'm going? I don't want to give it away. Just going to keep building the tension. If you're watching on the replay, make sure you stop the video and see if you can work this out. Well, what about using these values over here? Yes, Nigel says, isn't it the row number we need to move? Absolutely. Absolutely. When we enter more values, when we make more entries in the database, we're going to have to think about how to change the row value. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to do that today, so that might be your homework to work on the row value. I'm talking about the column value. Yeah. At the moment, the data is just going to appear in one column. Yeah. But we want that data to be going across the columns. Yeah, as in order to enter each piece of data in the right cell in the database. So how are we going to do that? Bart says, is that possible? A loop within a loop? You could use a loop within a loop. We don't need to. Replace 6 instead of a 5. Yeah, that's what we want to happen, isn't it, Jasfin? Yeah, so this number here, we want it to be 6. We want it to be 7. Then we want it to be 8. Then we want it to be 9. Then we want it to be 10. Okay. Let's set it back to 5. But we've already got those numbers entered. Can you remember? We've already got those numbers in the engine sheet. So we can say to Excel VBA, for the second component here, take the number in the table. Take the number in the table in the engine sheet that's 2 cells across. 2 cells across from the cells we're looping through. Remember, what cells are we looping through? What cells are we looping through here? We're looping through these cells. So we can say to Excel, use this number here. In order to do that, we're going to say Chris cell.offset. So Nigel, yep, you are certainly partially right. 0, 2. But this could get super confusing. Super confusing. You've got to have a fierce commitment to understanding where Chris cell is. Where is Chris cell? Well, E input start to the end of the range from E input start. Okay, so this is Chris' cell. That's what you've got to remember. Wherever the code goes, wherever we remotely move code around somewhere else in the file, Excel is looping through these cells. Yeah, Bart says, of course. Very good. So let's see what happens now. So I'm going to take a gamble. Yeah, I could do this more step by step, but I'm going to take a gamble and see if I can just, you know, create a bit of a wow factor here. So let's go to Chris data, run the routine now. So what's going to happen now? Let's delete this, run the routine, F8 key. Okay, I got Mortimer in the first column in the database. Now's the moment of the truth. Where does the next one go? Okay, next one goes next door. That's good. Where does the next one go? Next one goes next door. That's good. Where does the next one go? Next one goes next door, and the next one. Okay, so we can see that working. How is that working? This value is, of course, the value in the engine sheet here. Let's prove that. I'm going to change this to 4. Just change that to 4. Clear these values out. Back to the VBA editor. Now, where's the first value going to appear? Let's reset everything. Where's the first value going to appear? It's going to appear in column 4, which is in column D. This is the power of this technique. So we can change the columns that the data appears in just by changing values in the spreadsheet. This is advanced stuff, guys. This is powerful advanced stuff. This is some of the most complex coding I do. Okay, so give yourself time to understand this. As I said, there's easier supporting video resources on the channel to give you easier examples to understand this. But if you are getting it, this technique you're going to use for the rest of your career. I guarantee it. And I hope you think about me and Members Monday when you do. Okay, so now we can go ahead and run this routine. And let's say enter to data. I'm going to allocate a macro here. So transfer data. And let's go ahead and hit enter. Go to Chris data. And we can see we've got some inputs there. Let's do some testing now. Enter receipt sheet. So I'm going to say vendor. Vendor receipt PT. I'll drop down. Okay. Pay type. Pay memo. Input 1. Input 2. Cashier. Cool. Enter to data. And what can we see? We can see all of our data has gone in there. And does it all line up? Yes, all of the columns seem to line up pretty well. So let's test it again. Change the first enter here. Let's say last name. Okay, enter the data. And I can see the data is there. Okay, good. So have you managed to follow along with this? All we've learned is single line of code. Single line of code. That's all we've looked at, but super powerful. Bart says I need to go. Really good session. Thank you, Bart. Thank you for being with us. I'll see you next week, Bart. Send me an email. Gerhardt said, if one of the inputs is empty, then it will lead to an error. Yes, if one of these inputs is empty, I think it will lead to an error. If these inputs are empty, I don't think it will. Let's just clear a few of them. See our nice conditional formatting there. Very nice. Enter to data. And we can see there's no problems with empty cells here. Those empty cells just come through. Okay. It will be problematic if there's any empty cells here, but we're assuming these cells are okay because they're on an engine sheet. This sheet's going to be hidden. We're going to be using it. So it's safe to assume that these values are going to stay as they are. Okay, David says, will it then be that you will always use this method instead of the normal offset method, as this is explained in most videos on the internet? Great question, David. I mean, Sometimes I'd use dot cells, sometimes I'd use offset. It's very difficult to really describe which one is better, but I prefer, the advantage of cells is you don't need an anchor point. Okay, so if we have offset, then it's going to be range A1 dot offset blah blah 1 2 like that. Okay, so you always need this anchor point. Yeah, so the whole piece of code is going to be sheets 1 is going to be something like that. Okay, whereas with dot cells we can just say sheets 1 dot cells, 1 2 or whatever it is. So cells is more concise. It's slightly more concise than offset. Okay, and we don't need this anchor point. This is why I prefer dot cells sometimes these days, but I've done this with offset as well recently. I can't explain exactly why, but as you develop that experience, you get a sense for what's going to work. And you can see earlier in the stream, I was deciding whether to use offset or dot cells. Okay. So I hope that answers your question to some extent, David. To be honest, either is fine. And for this kind of application, you're not going to notice a difference in the calculation time. So either is okay. Pick the one you're most comfortable with. Eventually, as you go through your career, you're going to benefit from having a range of tools available, but that's only later in your career. Okay, so either is okay. Gerhardt said that's super cool. Thank you, Gerhardt. And Bart says bye. Okay, thank you, Bart. So your homework for next week, and you can email this to me if you get it to work. The problem we've got at the moment is when we enter the data, it's going to overwrite the previous data. Yeah, that's because we've got this hard-coded value. We've got numbers in the code, hard-coded values. We want to avoid that. We want to move towards dynamic solutions. So for your homework, try to make this dynamic so that the next entry is going to go on this row, the next entry is going to go on this row, and we get our nice database building up. That's what we're going to look at. Maybe we'll look at that next week. Try to do that for your homework. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. I've had a great time in Members Monday. So thank you to Jasfin, Nigel. Nigel, I trust you've been working hard because I haven't heard that much from you in the chat, but only a couple of things. So anyway, shoot me an email, Nigel. Let me know what you thought of it. Gerhardt, you said it's super cool. Thank you, Gerhardt. So I hope you got something out of that. And David, you've also had some good questions today, so I hope you got something out of it. And of course, I've done a video for you as well today, David. Hope you got some value out of that too. Nigel says a lot to take in. Absolutely, a lot to take in. But these resources, they're resources for life. Members Monday is going to be here for forever, as far as I know. It took me 10 years to get to this level. And that's 10 years of doing VBA programming most days. I do VBA programming most days of my life, whether I'm doing videos, most of the time doing client work. It's the old 10,000 hour rule. But one thing I can guarantee, Nigel, and everybody else, one thing I can guarantee is that it is worth it. It is worth it. Every hour you put into VBA will pay you back, whether it's in terms of your career, in terms of time saved, whatever it might be. So it's absolutely worth it. Anyway, guys, shoot me an email. Let me know what you'd like to see in Members Monday, and I will see you next week. Take care, guys. Thank you.